Good evening, everyone. My name is Gilbert, and on behalf of Vroman's Bookstore, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our virtual event with Ginger Gaffney and Pam Houston discussing their books, Half Broke, a Memoir, and Deep Creek, Finding Hope in the High Country. We are so excited and grateful that our bookstore can continue to bring authors and their works to our community during this uncertain time. Now, Romans Live will continue to host virtual events, and you can learn more about them on our website as well as our social media. Our next event is tomorrow, Wednesday, May 27th at 5 p.m. with Katie Orphan as she discusses her book, Read Me Los Angeles, Exploring LA's Book Culture. For regular updates on upcoming events, please feel free to subscribe to our newsletter, and you can do that by going to romansbookstore.com. This evening's virtual event will end with a Q&A, so to submit a question, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. If you see a question on the list that you'd like for our speakers to answer, please click the like button. We will try to answer as many questions as time will allow. Also, if you'd like to purchase a copy of one of tonight's or both of tonight's featured books, you can click on the green Buy Half Broke and Deep Creek button below the viewer screen, right there. That'll take you to our Vroman's Bookstore event page for this event, and both books are available there. With that said, let me introduce our authors for this evening. Ginger Gaffney is a top-ranked horse trainer. She received an MFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, and her work has been published in Tin House and Utne Reader. Pam Houston is the author of two novels, Contents May Have Shifted and Sighthound, two collections of short stories, Cowboys Are My Weakness and Waltzing the Cat, and a collection of essays, A Little More About Me, all published by W. W. Norton. She is the winner of the Western States Book Award, the Willa Award for Contemporary Fiction, the Evil Companions Literary Award, and several teaching awards. And just 2 days ago, she was awarded the Special Advocacy Award from the Mountain and Plains Independent Booksellers Association. She teaches in the low-res MFA program at the Institute of American Indian Arts, is a professor of English at UC Davis, and co-founder and creative director of the literary nonprofit Writing by Writers. And with that, I would like to now turn it over to Ginger and Pam. Welcome.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Thanks, Gilbert.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
It's great to be here. Thank you all for coming. It's wonderful to be reading with Ginger again. We had a whole bunch of tour dates canceled because of the pandemic. It was a funny thing. We read in Moab on a Friday, and it was packed, standing room only. And then by the next Tuesday, we were reading in Salt Lake, and everyone had decided to stay in their houses. It was that quick. The whole world changed in that weekend. I think we'll always remember that when we look back on this time, how we knew it had happened. But in any case, here we are again, virtually, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my book, Deep Creek. And then I will read a little bit, and then I'll say a few things about Ginger, and she will take over, and then we'll be happy to answer your questions. So Deep Creek began when my editor came to me, my editor at W. W. Norton came to me and said, I would like you to think about a book-length adventure that you could go on. And I thought about that. I'm an adventuring type. There's lots of adventures I haven't been on yet that I would like to. I thought I might mush dogs a long way, like to a pole, perhaps. I thought I might sail the whole coast of Turkey. That's something I've always wanted to do. So I made a list of book-length adventures, and my life is split between my home where I am now in southwestern Colorado and UC Davis, where I teach, and also Santa Fe, where I also teach. And so I I spend a lot of time on the move, and I go out to Davis for 10 weeks a year. And I was on my way home from Davis at about this time. Dogs were in the car. They always know when we go over Donner Pass that we're on our way home. We stop on Forest Service roads. We get over to what I think of as the leashless side of the Sierras. So we're doing some little hikes just to stretch our legs on Forest Service roads in Nevada. We're all so excited about coming home. And I have this thought, which is I'm already having my book length adventure. Like my book length adventure started 25 years ago, 26, 7 years ago almost now, when my first book, Cowboys Are My Weakness, was purchased by W.W. Norton for $21,000. And my agent handed me the check and said, don't spend it all on hiking boots. I was a graduate student at the time. I was making $4,500 a year. But I took that advice from her. It was more money than I had ever seen in one place. And I took that advice from her very seriously. And I left graduate school and went driving around the West looking for a place to call home, looking for a place to put that money down, something serious. And I found my way to this town of Creede, Colorado. After many, many towns, that was actually when my relationship with the independent booksellers began, because I had my first book out and I drove all over the West giving readings at small independent bookstores in small towns all over the Rocky Mountains, looking for a place to call home and talking to real estate people. And I got to Creede. First thing that happened when I got to Creede, this little town of 400 people, is I got invited to a wedding. And I went to the wedding, and there I met 3 women who had come to Creede, this little town, 9,000 feet in the Rockies, and they were all kind of doing their own thing. One of them opened a jewelry store. She makes jewelry of horsehair and silver. Another one opened the very first coffee shop, real coffee shop, like meaning espresso shop, that Creede had ever seen. This is now 27 years ago, remember. The third opened a flower store. And what they all told me at this wedding was that, well, yeah, this is a town that supports people. Like nobody ever would have had a latte before I opened, but now they come and pay $3 for their coffee. And now everyone takes a handful of flowers if they go to dinner at someone's house. And I thought, well, that's cool. And I met the real estate woman at the wedding, and she took me around and showed me a bunch of places that were quite frankly appropriate to my $21,000, my lack of a job, the fact I was more or less living in my car. And they were, shacks that hadn't been fixed up yet, or 3-acre lots where the wind blew all the time. And she said, I should take you out to see the Blair Ranch. And I said, sure. And she said, oh, but, a single woman like you doesn't want to live at the end of a 12-mile dirt road. And I said, I might. And she said, well, you can't afford it anyway. So for that, I had no argument. Went back to town, hadn't really seen anything I liked, was sitting in my car getting ready to go to the next place, Durango or Ouray, somewhere else down the road. And this tall belt buckle wearing real estate cowboy guy came and knocked on the window of my car, and he said, I hear you want to see the Blair Ranch. And I said, all right. And he said, come on. And so we got in his car and we came out here to this place that I am, this place on the cover. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. It was the 3rd week of September, so all the aspens were changing across the mountains. It's a high mountain meadow surrounded on 3 sides by 12,000-foot peaks, a simple log cabin, and the most beautiful 100-year-old barn, just a little barn, but a beautiful barn. And I fell instantly in love with it. The recently reduced price on the ranch, 120 acres, small log cabin, barn. The recently reduced price made my $21,000 come in at exactly 5%. And I didn't know very much about real estate. I was a starving grad student, but I knew that that wasn't good. And I didn't have a job. I had this book that was in the world, Cowboys Are My Weakness, but I didn't have 3 pages of another book to rub together. And what this realtor said was, you know, Donna Blair, who was the widow who was selling the ranch, she said, Donna Blair is going to like the idea of you. So why don't you give me your $21,000 and a signed hardcover copy of Cowboys Are My Weakness, and I'll see what I can do. And a few days later, Donna Blair agreed to sell me the ranch for 5% down and a signed hardcover copy of my first book of short stories. And she, most importantly, carried the note herself, because no bank in the world would have financed me, nor should they have. And I bought the ranch for its unspeakable beauty, for the adrenaline rush of buying it. I was a little bit addicted to danger in those days. I fell in love, and it was an outlandish thing to do. I'm a girl from New Jersey who thought hot water came out of the wall, and suddenly I had a 120-acre ranch to take care of. And over the course of the next 25, as of the writing, but 7 now years, the ranch grew me up, turned me into a human, a full-fledged human. The animals on the ranch, which are horses, sheep, chickens, donkeys, dogs, of course, taught me my humanity. They taught me how to love unconditionally. They taught me how to die. They taught me how to be with the dying. So many lessons, you know, everything from how to sweep your own chimney to how to hold a dying animal while it takes its last breath. I thought I was going to have to do that 2 days ago. I thought I had a little lamb that was dying, but so far we've brought him around. Which is why I look so tired, by the way, because I was up all night holding the lamb, keeping him warm in the barn. In any case, the ranch, over and over again, there is no end to the ranch's lessons. And it's been, you know, I say in the book that at some point it stopped being the thing I always had to figure out how to make the mortgage payment on, and became the story of my life. And now I have a whole new chapter with it, right? The COVID chapter. I've never been here before when I don't have to leave to earn my living. So this is a whole new deepening of my relationship with it that's happening right now. So let me read to you just a little bit. I thought I might read 2 quick sections. The first one is just a little horse section. Ginger is the horse woman extraordinaire. She knows everything that's happening inside a horse. And she, in fact, brought me a horse on Saturday, and he's now making me happy every minute out there in the pasture. But this is about my old horse, Deseo, who's been here just about as long as I have. It's called Carving Rivers. Today, I'll spend 3 hours carving rivers through ice with a pointed shovel and a maul. And by the day's end, I'll have the blisters to prove it. It's to do with Deseo, who finds all manner of things scary and off-putting. Purple buckets, flapping jackets, the wind whispering through the pines. The trough where the horses drink in winter is at the end of the pasture, where all the water from the snowmelt drains toward Lime Creek. The trough is there because that's where the frost-free hydrant is, and the frost-free hydrant is there because it's the closest point to the house from which the water originates. The longer the line from the house to the frost-free hydrant, the higher the chance of the system freezing, and then we go back to hauling water again. Unfortunately, when we get into the freeze and melt portion of the winter, which can last from early March to mid-May, a pond develops around the trough, which turns into a skating rink every time the temperature dips below 30, which is to say every single night. And to Deseo, a skating rink surrounding a horse trough might be the scariest thing of all. When Deseo doesn't drink, his metabolic condition gets worse. When he refuses to cross the ice, I carry a bucket of water out to him. Sadly, then, the bucket becomes the object of his fear. I can leave it on the ground and walk away to prove it is neither strange nor alive. I can float little bits of carrot on the surface of the water to make it more enticing. I can even get on my hands and knees and pretend to slurp some of the water up into my mouth myself, but he simply won't have it. He feels there is only one designated safe place to drink in this pasture, and that is the water trough now booby-trapped by a non-negotiable platform of ice. So I wait until the temperature crawls above freezing, about noon, and head to the pasture with my tools. The sun has felt truly warm all week, but this ice that formed on the bottom of what used to be deep snow has had a good 4 months of sub-zero to harden. I jump up and down as hard as I can and kick at it with my steel-toed boots and about detach my arms from my shoulder blades, wielding the maul over my head to shatter the surface. This part is fun, how it must feel to break a car's windshield. Once pits and cracks begin to form, I dig little tributaries into the ice with the tip of my shovel. In about 30 minutes, it has warmed up a few more degrees, and I get a satisfying little trickle to flow downhill out of the skating rink, around the trough and into the yard. I hack some more, the thermometer ticks up another degree, and the water does what water does best, gives into gravity. I follow it, assisting with a few hacks of my shovel all across the front of my property. Before too long, I have the world's smallest river flowing from the bottom of my pasture all the way across the yard and into Lime Creek. I watch the creek water tumble toward the Rio Grande, imagining it running past the town of Creed and then through Wagon Wheel Gap, down the canyon and across the San Luis Valley, through the box near Taos, eventually forming the border between Texas and Mexico and flowing into the Gulf. I am filled with a completely disproportionate sense of satisfaction. For a second, I understand why those guys were crazy enough to think they could build the Panama Canal. I return to the trough and hack my way to another tiny river, and then another one, learning quite a bit about the various properties of water and ice in the process. Once I get the little rivers started, for instance, they deepen and widen and hasten on their own, just like I learned in geology class. 2 cubic feet per second turn into 20 with a little more sun and a little more coaxing. In 3 hours, I have 10 outlet rivers carved into the ice surrounding the trough, and I am starting to develop blisters on my blisters. But the sun is still up, and snow is in the forecast, and I love my old nervous horse. So I cut 5 more rivers around the far edges of the ice, just in case the pond gets even bigger. And then I will just read one more very short section from a longer essay called A Kind of Quiet Most People Have Forgotten. This is an essay that bounces around, so I don't think I need to set it up much, but I'm having a drink with 2 students, 2 young women, Kyle and Maggie, in Pittsburgh. So this isn't exactly set at the ranch. It's one of the times the book leaves the ranch, but it's about the ranch in a certain way. The waitress brings Kyle and Maggie their beers, and me my Pellegrino with lime. And we are talking about favorite dogs or favorite bands. But Kyle is looking at me so intently with those sad, soulful eyes. The next thing I know, I'm saying, you know, there was a period of my life when I thought I might kill myself because a man I thought I loved didn't love me back. It embarrasses me to say so, but there it is. Kyle's face is some mixture of stunned and relieved, which I take as a sign to continue. I've always measured my sense of well-being on airplanes when we hit turbulence. You know, how much or how little do I care if this plane goes down? They nod. They both do know. I can actually remember willing the plane to tumble from the sky a few times because some Joe I probably could not pick out of a lineup were he here tonight didn't call or went out with one of his 4 other girlfriends or lied about where he was last Saturday. The girls are quiet. Even Apache has stopped licking his balls. That's the dog. It flashes through my mind I might be grossing them out. Like in the way you don't want your parents to mention the great sex they had over breakfast. You didn't ask me to dinner, I know, so I would sit here and rattle on with my old lady advice, I continue. But I've been thinking a lot lately about how much power I used to give the men in my life to make me feel okay or not okay. There are reasons for that, ugly childhood reasons, so I try to give myself a break. I'm not a regretter, exactly. I think writers all need something to push against, and that was my thing for a long time. And yet at 52, it seems absolutely mystifying to me I would give men so much power. It's a power I don't think most of them even really want. Now Kyle is looking at me like I have crawled inside her brain. We are all silent for a while. Maggie's got a good man, is what she finally manages to say. I nod. I don't doubt it. Maggie's grief for her mom is palpable, piercing, but it is not full of the shadows and confusion that come when a little girl is treated badly in 100 different ways by fathers or father figures, that insidious, everlasting training. I don't know anything about your past, I say to Kyle, and I'm not trying to tell you how to live. Somebody could have said all this to me when I was your age. I'm sure somebody did. And it would have probably just made me double down. I had to do it as long as I had to do it. Chase those nasty cowboys. I smile and Kyle smiles, but her eyes never do. I'm just saying, I guess there's another version after this version to look forward to. Because of wisdom or hormones or just enough years going by, if you live long enough, you quit chasing things that hurt you. You eventually learn to hear the sound of your own voice. A patch of groans, maybe signaling the end of the conversation. So I drain my Pellegrino and reach for the check, but Kyle stills my hand. What made it change, she asks, for you? There are so many possible answers, including $20,000 worth of therapy, several New Age healing ceremonies, one involving a man who set his own chest on fire, and another involving a dustbuster, 5 published books, and a pre-cancer diagnosis. But I say the thing that feels first, truest, and most long-term. I realized I could make my own life, I say. I could have my own ranch. I finally realized I could be the cowboy. So thank you for that. I want to say just a couple of things about Ginger in introduction to her. I've already said she's the most amazing animal intuitive, I guess. She said she met my little, one of my lambs, Becky, who's got quite a big personality, but she only met her for about 5 seconds. And she sent me a text and she said, I think Becky's very interested in relationship. It's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful way to be, is how Ginger is. So she knows everything about horses, but she also knows a lot about writing. I was very lucky to have Ginger as my student when she was working on this memoir at the Institute of American Indian Arts. She writes physical action as well as any writer I've ever seen, because she reads physically. She reads the body. She read Becky's interior from seeing her movements on the exterior. And that's only one of the things that's so beautiful about Half Broke. It's such an amazing book. I've read it now so many times because I keep teaching it and we keep doing these things together. And every time there's 5 or 6 places where I really just full on cry, even though I completely know what's coming. These horses and the people of the book that you will meet are unforgettable. And I'm very honored to be with her tonight and to have been a little part of getting Half Broke finished. And please enjoy what you're about to hear from Ginger.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. Pam was a lot more than a little bit a part of Half Broke. Yeah, so anyhow, hi everybody. Maybe I know a few of you, maybe I don't. But this is my first book, Half Broke. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about that because some of you are working on your first book. I was lucky enough to go to the Institute of American Indian Arts, get my MFA there, and I got to work with Pam as my thesis advisor. But I also went to a school that really values vulnerable writing, and I don't know if Halfbrook would have come to be if it wasn't for the Institute of American Arts. Yeah, and the professors there, the teachers, the students. The students are so remarkable. So if anybody's interested, you should look it up online. They take a small percentage of non-native students, but I can't say enough about that program. So, and thank God Pam came there. She came in my second year, and I was workshopping with her, and she said at lunch after workshop, she said, "Hey, how many more pages of this do you have?" You know, I want to say something about Pam Houston because I mean, everybody loves Pam. I think. I mean, everybody I know loves Pam.
Not quite everybody.
Not quite. Well, that's good. You gotta have a few enemies. But what a teacher, and I'm so grateful for what she's putting into the world for writers, especially young writers, but for any writer like me. What a generous teacher, the hardest working writer, teacher I know. And so if you ever get a chance to work with Pam at her Writing by Writers workshops, please take it. You know, I wouldn't be here without it. I took a number of her workshops through her program, and a manuscript workshop I did for my book, and that's where I met my agent. So I'm a big fan, and I'm still taking the workshops online now to keep my writing going. And I love Pam Houston with all my heart. She's the most loving person, and of course we have all these animals to love together, so it brings us closer. So I'm going to talk about my book now after I just did my loving, homage to Pam because God, amazing woman. Oh, but before I do that, I wanted to say that she's got a new book coming out, fans. She's doing a book called Airmail, Letters on Politics, Pandemics, and Place with Amy Irvine. It's through Tory Press. It's an all-women's press, not for profit, I believe. Yeah, it's coming out October 2020, right before the election. So it's coming out soon. And anyhow, look it up. Keep it up because we're gonna need it. We're gonna need it right before that election. So it's the letters that they wrote back and forth during the pandemic. So yeah. Half Broke is a memoir about my time working at a prison resentencing ranch. It is actually Delancey Street Foundation. If any of you know what that is, and if you don't, you can look it up. They have multiple locations all around the country, and they have a place here in New Mexico, just outside of Espanola. And it's 5 miles from my house. It's right across the Rio Grande from me. I got a call in the spring of 2013. Like I get lots of calls of people having issues with their horses. And this was Delancey Street calling me. It was one of the women. It was nighttime. It was dinner time. And there was a lot of noise in the background. Now I know it was about 120 people eating dinner behind her. And she was calling me, telling me all the troubles that she was having, they were having. People were hurt. Horses were hurt. And the way things were going, the way she was describing it to me, I couldn't believe it. It's not a kind of call I've ever had. When I found out it was the ranch across from the river from me, it really intrigued me. It's a place that I drive by often. It's got 12-foot tall adobe walls with razor wire on the top, and you can't see in, but it's beautifully kept. And it just had a mystery to me. And I knew there were horses in there, but I didn't know what was going on in there. And I'll say this before I start, a lot of people in there are there because of crimes, but most of them are drug-related crimes. And they've been in and out of prison many times and been in recovery, in and out of recovery many times. So I had been robbed many times by like 4 or 5 times, Glenda and I, my partner. And so I didn't have this heightened view or this, I don't know, it wasn't a do-gooder, as some cowboys say. I didn't really have a good feeling about addicts, drug addicts, because always I've been robbed by them. And they come and they take my saddles and my bridles every time. And when I replace them and I start riding again in full view, then they come back. So here I'm getting this call, and I'm thinking maybe I can find some of my saddles there. I didn't have a good heart about it. I thought I'll check it out. It's interesting. It sounds really interesting, but I don't want anybody to think that I just went there with this great big heart. And I had a lot of judgment around addiction and drug addicts. And so what I found and how the whole book evolves and how much I was drawn in, just want to make that clear that it wasn't this perfect, loving human being around it. So I wanted to, for those who haven't read the book, I'm just going to read that first part of the first chapter when I first arrived there. It's called Emotional Camouflage. It's March 2013. Hold on, put my glasses on. The men and women from the livestock team are sitting on tables and benches placed under the shelter of a small tack room, positioned a few yards away from the nighttime corrals. It's 4 in the afternoon and it's feeding time. Recently, they have experienced bad accidents during the feeding routine, arguments about whose fault it was, and the question of how to fix the problems are on their minds. I introduce myself to everyone as each member of the team rises to shake my hand and tell me their name. They begin to talk. The most recent accident with Paul keeps coming up. Paul was trampled by Hawk 2 days ago. His left wrist is wrapped in a support bandage, and he limps along, dragging his right leg. How can we keep them from running us over? I mean, they don't listen, Paul explains. Paul is a tall man with a thick neck and broad shoulders. They run right through us, like we aren't even here, he tells me. His earlobes have wide open holes at their end. I see straight through them, like I'm looking through tiny windows. Is this at dinner time or other times too? I ask. Always at dinner, anytime there's food. A tall, thin man rises off the bench to shake my hand. His name is Rex. He grins as he unbuttons his collared shirt to show me a perfect hoof-shaped bruise on his chest. Scout knocked me good yesterday during the morning feed, he tells me as he gestures out into the pasture to a brown and white spotted horse standing away from the rest of the herd. I was dropping the hay into his trough when he spread around and got me. Rex is taller than Paul, 6'3" at least, lean and lanky. He towers over me with his shirt unbuttoned, looking down at me with his hazel green eyes. I hesitate. I want to see how this goes, I tell the group. Let's bring them in. Let's feed them. A young man named Marcus rises from the bench. He has the body of a guy who spends too much time in the gym. His muscles bulge under his right tight t-shirt and make his upper torso move like a stone. He looks a little angry, yet he speaks carefully. I wonder if my presence makes him nervous. I get the feeling that not everyone on livestock is happy to have me have my help. Let's get him, guys. The other men rise off the bench at his command. Marcus walks over, unlatches the hay barn door, swings it open, and starts throwing small portions of alfalfa hay into the arms of the waiting men. The horses stand at the far end of the pasture, heads down and quietly chewing. With the sound of the latch and the barn door swinging open, they snap their heads from the ground, readying themselves to race in our direction. Each man grabs 2 cuts of alfalfa, tucks them straight against his body, and launches into a run toward the night corrals. They toss the hay into the feed troughs and tear back to the shelter of the tackroom shed, intent and out of breath. A few of the men make a second trip back to the corrals to ensure that each horse has enough hay for the night. Flora, Sarah, and the others cram themselves into the front of the hay barn, shouting like they are participating in an important sporting event. Hurry up, here they come, get in here. The residents' screaming paralyzes me, and then here they come, the horses galloping, ears back, kicking up, and thundering towards us. I'm standing alongside the large cottonwood tree that shades the barn and night corrals. A herd of horses racing across the field has a mesmerizing effect. Most of my days are filled with teaching horses how to feel comfortable in the world of humans. But my secret truth is that I love their world more. All they need is their bodies. As they gallop toward us, as I see their legs churn under the wide girth of their ribcage. The shouting and screaming grows louder, and a few of the men run out and grab me, dragging me back inside the hay barn. Marcus slams the gate behind us. We are tucked into an 8-foot wide space in front of the hay. The horses roar up to the wooden gate at a gallop, a band of snake bodies twisting and kicking dirt into the air. They level their heads and necks down to the height of their shoulders, flat and thin, ready to strike. It sounds like a hiss, but it's more like spit. Hawk opens his mouth and his teeth jut forward at us. He snaps his jaw shut and curls back his lips. The force of it shoots a mist of saliva all over our faces. He can see us. They all can, but they cannot get to us. Their dark, hollow eyes are unrecognizable to me. Watching them bare their teeth at us like predators, as if we were their meal, makes me think these are not horses. We are their captives, herded into our cell like lesser animals. They stand in front of the gate, swinging their necks back and forth, ears flat back, clumped together. We step back from the gate and wait, not saying a word. I feel the touch of our bodies pinned against one another, the intimacy of our fear, the smell of adrenaline and sweat steams up from our cluster. Once we are thoroughly dominated, the horses walk into their corrals for their evening meal, and we wait in silence, listening for the horses to settle. 5 or 10 minutes pass. A few, we can hear the horses chewing on their alfalfa. A few of the men sneak out of our shelter, hunkered low and moving like thieves. They run to the corrals and shut the gates. I hear the latches slap tight. Now we can re-enter our world. The giant beasts are content and contained for the night. People say that horses mirror their owner. To protect themselves, they become you. They blend themselves to the inside of a person, emotional camouflage. The ranch horses have seen a lot of damaged people over the years. The ranch horses, they carry their life stories on their faces, in their postures, and with their unique styles of movement. This physical expression is a language the horses are well equipped to understand. Fear and its family members, anger, frustration, pain, are all carried in the residents' steps, in their shoulders and necks, the way their backs round forward, forcing them to look out to the tips of their eyes, hiding in the shadows just beneath their eyebrows. Some of the residents move with an artificial confidence, their arms gesturing wildly as they shout orders at their work crew. Others have no life left in their bodies. They are soft and amorphous, like small sea creatures clinging to a reef. Movement and the lack thereof is an emotional story. It tells all. Over the many years, this contained engagement between herding humans and these once wild animals has created a disaster. Strong men and women beaten down by poverty, by family history, by the prison system, all walk the ranch daily, unknowingly communicating their pain to the horses. With their ears and eyes, even grazing head down, the horses see all, feel all. Horses survive by acknowledging risk and by assigning leadership. Flight, not fight, is how horses naturally resolve problem situations. Leaders become leaders by keeping the herd out of harm's way, by noticing peril and using their inherited gift of speed to reduce the danger posed. Flight or fight. Inside the tall adobe walls of this contained ranch, lacking the space to truly flee, living among 100 men and women who broadcast danger with every movement, the horses have chosen to fight. So thank you. And maybe we can open up to some questions. Gilbert?
Yes, I am here. Give me just a moment to get back on screen. Thank you so much to both of you. Those are great passages and really emotional passages. I have I just want to make sure that everybody that's watching right now to use that ask a question button down there at the bottom, and you can enter your question there, and we can ask our authors. We have one question here right now from Julie Martin. It looks like it's for Pam. She has a quote. It's day all day in daytime, and there is no night in Creed. What impact does 19th century Creed have on your writing today? Does it?
Well, it did on Deep Creek. It doesn't in general. I'm not a historic writer. I learned that one time I was asked to contribute to an anthology called A Dozen on Denver, where 12 Colorado writers were asked to write an essay. And because I couldn't attend the meeting where they handed out the decades, I got 1880. And you may as well have just told me to like get under a BMW and change the carburetor, because I was like, what? I write so much from my personal experience, and I write so much from, my senses, the sensory details around me. That's where all my writing starts. That it seemed impossible. It seemed like someone was saying, speak Mandarin, to try to set a story in 1880. And I solved that problem by realizing that if I set the story in the Oxford Hotel, which is a place I have been many times for many events, that hotel was there at that time. And once I had place, I could sort of write out from it, but the story still wasn't very good. In any case, in Deep Creek, I was very conscious that I am a steward of this particular 120 acres that had been stewarded by someone before me and someone before that. And it was important to me to tell that story to the best of my ability, to tell the story of the ranch in particular, prior to my being here. And that was mostly telling the story as much as I could glean about Bob Pinkley, who lived here for 60 years. His father in fact, his older sister proved up the ranch, though his father's name was on the claim. And so I did, as I said, what passes for research for me, which it's not my specialty, but I went to the Creed Historical Society. I looked at a lot of pictures, and I talked to the few people in town who knew Bob personally before he died in the 60s, the 1960s, and also talked to some people who knew his nephew. So I sort of did due diligence because I believed that, this place has power and history that and I'm just passing through. I have been here longer than anyone except Bob here on these acres.
That's cool.
And there were, of course, indigenous people living here prior, but perhaps not here at the ranch. That we don't know for sure in the area. But in terms of European settlement, Bob's father was the first, and I've been here longer than anyone else. And and so yeah,
and Bob was
Bob
was a lover of horses.
He was.
Yeah.
He loves horses. The cabin that I write in, which was Bob's, which is this little tiny, I actually raised the roof so I could walk into it. Bob was very short. But that's my writer's cabin. And carved into the window frames are the names of all his horses and the day he got them and the day they died. So he was a lover of horses, but he apparently could not tolerate cows. Or cow shit. If he got any cow shit on him, apparently he went berserk, but he would have, laid down in horse shit quite happily. He loved all. So I know a lot of fun facts about Bob, and I was really interested in that. But in terms of, I've written some pieces for television and some essays over the years, a very few about the mining days and so forth in Creed, but it's not a strong draw for me to write about.
We have a question from Glenda. She says, you both write so powerfully of the connection to land and animals. Where do you think that was born in each of you?
Thanks, Glenn. That's my partner in the other room, right? The question.
Excellent.
Gosh, I grew up an extreme introvert. I was not ever a people person. I'm still working on it. So it was always the land for me, the animals, the sea, the ocean. But I wasn't at all comfortable with people, but they scared the hell out of me. There's a little girl just kind of cowering underneath the dining room table with the dog, So as I grew up, I just kept gravitating towards safety all the way through my 30s. Just land, being outside, and demanding that I had a life with horses. I had to overcome some people who didn't want me to have one. But if it, they're still my savior, and I know that's true for a lot of people. And in fact, they are the ones that have helped me be better with people. Yeah. especially right now. Right now, where people are going through so much, and they're relying on their horses, and I'm helping them a lot through this time. So the horses and the animals are still kind of my muse. Yeah.
What about you, Pam?
I just wanted to say, as you were talking, so Ginger did bring me a horse on Saturday. His name is Ben, and he's very beautiful. And as he was talking, I saw him leading the herd at a full gallop all the way into the corral from across the pasture. And it's probably the first time my old horse Deseo has galloped in, I don't know, 2 years. So Ben is going to be very good for Deseo. In any case, yeah, I mean, kind of the same. I grew up in a violent alcoholic household and didn't trust. I wasn't as much of an introvert, but I knew I couldn't trust the people who were, whose care I had been charged with. In other words, my parents, who had been charged with my care. And I had this wonderful babysitter named Martha Washington, who I write about in this book. And she wasn't especially an animal person, but she recognized that I was. And even from when I was a tiny, tiny kid, Martha used to say she would take me out in my stroller. And there were these 2 German shepherds in the neighborhood named Salt and Pepper. And Salt and Pepper would literally come, according to Martha, and flank my stroller and go on walks with us. And I don't actually remember Salt and Pepper, but I heard Martha tell that story so many times. And I think this idea of animal guardians, animal protectors, I always feel comforted by the presence of an animal, whether it's, my beloved dogs, or whether it's just a visitation from a kingfisher. A kingfisher sighting can turn my whole day around. If I see a kingfisher, it means things are going to be okay, and I don't know, that the way they're present, the way they love, their consistency, all of these things about animals that the people in my young life didn't have. Presence, love, consistency. And so, I mean, Martha did, to be sure, but some other people around, my parents and their friends, did not. So I think it was just, I love them and trust them because they are trustworthy. They are, and I say in the book, like, it's not that I haven't been loved by humans now in my life. I have, but still, like, the gale force of love that comes at you from an animal, if you're open to it, is unlike anything a human's capable of, because humans are always apologizing for themselves all the time.
Yeah, very true. So I have a question from Annette Snow. How did you end up dealing with the aggressive horses, the ones you read to us about?
Well, if you're not a horse person, I'll tell you, it's really simple. Horses like to know what number they are. And at the ranch, they did not know what number they were. So horses live in a herd. And somebody's number 1, somebody's number 2, somebody's 10, somebody's 22. And when I went to the ranch, they did not know that they were number 2 or 3 or 12. They all thought they were number 1. And that happened because of trauma, both the trauma that happened to the residents early in their life, transferring into their bodies and into their actions, and the horses reading that and having to defend themselves from it by living on such a small acreage with so many troubled people. I knew my job was to help them realize they were number 2 or number 4, so they could find their place.
Hmm.
And I've seen it over and over so many times, so many years, that I knew if I could establish that simply, things would change quickly, because horses do not want to be number 1. It's the most stressful role in the herd, because it's the role that keeps them safe, finds them food, water. Often it's a mare. The myth of the stallion is a myth. It's always a top mare. But anyhow, the horses at this ranch were really confused about what number they were in their herd. And their herd was 115 people plus themselves.
Oh.
So I just established that one by one. I worked those horses one by one, slowly, until things were more clear for them. And I didn't really let the residents work with them at that time. I brought my horses over, who were very clearly knew what number they were. They weren't number 1. That's how it worked. It was very simple. It was a lot of work. It was dangerous as hell, but we got through it.
We have just about out of time here, so we have time for one more question. This is from Sarah. Sorry, give me 1 second. Get the right question up here. Something is going on my side. Sorry, my computer just kind of went weird. So, for some reason,
I've got it here.
you got
Is
it there.
Sarah?
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
can the question is, are this BLM Mustangs, or what is their origin?
Oh, they're all those free horses that nobody seems to want anymore for dangerous reasons. So they were all donated from individuals claiming how wonderful they are. But there is no such thing as a free horse. There's a reason why they're free. But no, we didn't have any Mustangs. It wasn't that. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. I didn't get it. I got it back. And the one more question that I was going to have was going to be it's 4 p.m. This might actually be from the same person. What are you learning about yourself while you are social distancing at the ranch, since you usually have plans to leave often for your work? Do you think you can stay there contented for an indefinite period of time?
That's a really, I mean, of course, I spend a lot of time with that question. You know, I'm grateful to be writing. I'm writing a lot since we got home. And I'm grateful to be reading. I'm also reading a lot. And I was just saying on a thing I was on before this thing an hour ago, I was saying, like, thank goodness reading and writing are 2 of my favorite things. Like, what if clubs and malls were 2 of my favorite things? Like, then where would I be? But my hope, I can tell you what my hope is. I mean, so far, so good. I'm okay. Even though prior to this, I would have said, if someone told me I couldn't leave, or I couldn't get on a plane, or I couldn't go explore a world I was dying to explore, or I couldn't go see my friends in a sophisticated city, like those kinds of things I would have thought they would have made me panic, but I haven't panicked. And my hope for us all, and the earth, honestly, is that we will learn in this time that we need fewer choices and we need to get on fewer airplanes. I mean, nobody loves to get on an airplane more than me. So I'm talking about myself here. That we will learn we need fewer things and less movement and fewer choices to be happy. because I think if we could learn that, we would have a chance at, treating each other and the planet better. But I have to say that I'm surprised at how much I'm enjoying this. And I do think, just to bring us around, that getting as many new animals as possible is the solution. Because I have been so much cheerier in the 4 days since Ben has arrived. And I am so cheery that I called a woman and I'm going to get 8 new chickens.
Oh.
because I think the solution is in more animals.
That's a lesson to be learned for everyone.
Chickens are on the uptick everywhere.
I'm sure.
Yeah, they are.
Well, that's all the time that we have, and I just want to say thank you so much to Pam and Ginger, the both of you. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for talking and just being here for all of us to enjoy. And we love these moments when we get to just hear authors talk about their work, even though we're all kind of holed up in our own places. So thank you.
Thank you, Gilbert, for putting it together.
Thank you, Gilbert, and thank you, Vromans, for doing these.
Yeah.
I mean, I live in a very red place, and these kinds of things remind me that there are my kind out there. So I'm really grateful for it. I really am.
Excellent. Thank you to everybody who tuned in today, and thank you for supporting independent bookstores. Please continue to do so wherever you are. We need you now more than ever. So don't forget, you can click on that buy button down there at the bottom. That'll take you to the Vroman's website, where you can purchase both of the authors' books from this evening. And make sure, if you'd like to catch another event of ours, you follow us here on Crowdcast, subscribe to our newsletter on our website, and follow us on social media. So again, thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming.